We realized early on that a change like the one we were embarking on, the kind of transformation does not happen with just tech. It needed change management, it needed training, it needed different skill sets, not just for IT, but for the organization overall.
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter Hai. My guest today is Sineesh Keshav. Sineesh is the Chief Technology Officer at Prologis, the leader in logistics real estate that earns roughly $6 billion in annual revenue. Sineesh has been in his role for roughly 7 years, and in his role, he's responsible for all aspects of technology and the design, development, and delivery of Prologis's global technology initiatives. Prior to assuming his current role in May of 2018, Sineesh was the Senior Vice President of IT at Experian, where he was responsible for development of decisioning solutions. Sineesh, welcome to Technovation. It's great to speak with you today.
Great to be here, Peter, and good to see you again.
Thank you so much. Well, I would love to have you, especially for those who may be a little less familiar with the business, in your own words, share a bit more about Prologis' business, if you would.
Sure. So Prologis is the world's largest logistics real estate company. And in many ways, we are perhaps the largest real estate company, period, in the world. We have about 1.2 billion square feet of space. And by logistics real estate, what we mean is warehouses, typically the fulfillment centers, distribution centers that our customers, who's a virtual who's who in the retail and 3PL world, use as their facility for one of their facilities for enabling their supply chain. And so we have 1.2 billion square feet of that kind of space spread across 20 countries. We have about $220 billion worth of assets under management, to give you an idea of what the combined value of all those assets are. And we have, like you said, about 6 billion plus in NOI, and have about 5,600 buildings is what that counts to, and about 6,700 customers. A virtual who's who of the 3PL and retail world that, like I talked about, are our customers, but we have 6,700 customers. So you could have your neighborhood bike shop be storing bikes at our facility too. So there's a pretty long tail, and that's who we are.
That's a great background. Thank you so much for sharing that. Talk a bit about your role as Chief Technology Officer, if you would. What's within your purview in that role?
Sure. So first of all, just a quick little background on me. This is my first real estate gig in that sense. I have been in technology all through. I've had stints at Experian and American Express and Safeway Albertsons, like you mentioned in the bio. I got to Prologis in 2018, and what drew me to this company, and I think it's important then to connect what I do today and what my team does to what drew me here, was that here was a company that was very comfortably, and still is, comfortably placed in our industry, the undisputed leader. But there was a constant desire to disrupt ourselves before someone else did. And that was the vibe I picked up back in 2018, and it's still what drives our culture today. So we don't rest on our laurels, constantly trying to innovate. Now, a lot of companies that I've been associated with and that I've looked at all do pretty healthy doses of this innovation, but sometimes it's forced. There's a difference between, are you doing it because you have no choice, or are you doing it because you want to? And that distinction was pretty compelling to see at a company like Prologis. So I was brought in as the CTO, and I am the CTO now, and that entails all aspects of technology. So think about everything from the back office systems, our financial systems, and our accounting systems, all the way to what we deploy in terms of technology to our warehouses, which has seen a manifold increase. Supporting our newer lines of businesses with technology as well. We have a very thriving energy business. I'm sure we'll talk about that some. We have our EV charging business fleet charging business, so technology associated with that. So it's all aspects of tech, whether it's internal facing, customer facing, warehouse, or back office is what my remit entails.
Remarkable. And you've started to allude to some of the growth in the 7 years you've been with the organization. I wonder if I could, having heard some of it from you in our past conversations, if you could enlighten our audience as to the scale of the operation 7 years ago versus today, as I'd love to get further into all that you've done with your team to be able to facilitate that growth. Could you share a bit about the company you found versus where you are now?
Absolutely. So it's been a fascinating growth, even in my time here. So to give you some numbers, we and some of these are directionally right. I don't exactly remember as of May 12th, 2018, what the numbers were, but we were about 750 million square feet back then. We are now 1.2 billion square feet. We were probably around 4,000 buildings. Now we are 5,600 buildings. We were about 5,000 customers. We are now 6,700 customers. We were in 19 countries. We've only added one more country, India, in the time that I've been here. But it's been a world of change for the company. We were 1,600 employees. We are 2,500 employees now. So on all counts, we've grown, and we've done exceedingly well.
Yeah, really remarkable. Well, I would love to understand, as the company has grown, how it is that your team plans for that growth. It's not as, a lot of organizations go through sort of slow plotting growth, and it's a bit easier to manage as a result of that. Take what you're doing this year and add 3 or 5%, something like that. That's not been your story. And so planning ahead for an organization that's changing so rapidly has its own opportunities for innovation, but its own challenges associated with it as well. Can you talk a bit about how you and your team think about what the company continues to become and how you stay ahead of that?
First of all, we have I often tell people we're kind of a large company stuck in a small company's body, so to speak. And the reason I say that is that it's a pretty flat organization, and there's really not extra layers of bureaucracy to go around, and almost everyone knows everyone else at the company. So there's no place to hide, if you will. And what that fosters is a culture of very open communication and collaboration. So everyone actually knows what each other is doing. Could be improved, of course. And when you're self-introspective, you always feel you could do better, and I get that. But I also come in with a frame of reference of other companies I worked at, and I compare ourselves to those other places. And I feel like the level of collaboration and communication is pretty high. So when we look at how IT is set up and some of the changes that I had to make as soon as I got here, one of the key items was that, like every other company that's seen organic explosive growth like Prologis, sometimes the pace of growth outpaces the growth of technology infrastructure or the sophistication of it. So we had our fair share of Excel spreadsheets. Nothing against Excel. I love Excel, and we still use quite a bit of it. Sometimes it is the right tool. But, we had certain key business processes perhaps running on antiquated technology, but it was working well. It wasn't like it was not working. So there had to be a mindset of we're not going to fall for the do not touch it if it ain't broke kind of a philosophy to tech, because I've seen from my prior experience that sometimes that eventually becomes your weak spot, your weak link. And you want to be ahead of that. So one of the things structurally even that we did in the organization was to make sure that all of our key capabilities across the company had dedicated IT help and technology help. And that made a huge difference because it was no longer about whoever is the loudest gets the funding and gets the resources. It became a little more of a case of every single key capability across the business had a chance to innovate and figure out what is coming up next. The closeness to the business strategy and aligning business and tech, of course, helps as well. And And then there are, of course, these horizontal infrastructure-like things that we needed to do to just do the basic table setting needed for such a kind of transformation. So there were also need for teams that are dedicated to data and analytics, for instance. We knew that our proprietary data, even back in 2018, was something that we could truly leverage if we had the right infrastructure around it. And so we went to work putting together a team that really was going to build a data foundation that would be best in class. And so when a new business like our energy business shows up on the horizon, the model is flexible enough where you could expand it to accommodate energy. So for instance, that if you think of that as a new capability that is coming into the company, from an IT standpoint, it needs dedicated IT help, technology resources, technology systems. And so we immediately can expand the paradigm of every capability being taken care of from a tech standpoint to energy. And so that kind of a model has served us well. We've had to do quite a bit of retooling, not just on the system side, but also on the people side and the process side. We realized early on that a change like the one we were embarking on, the kind of transformation does not happen with just tech. It needed change management, it needed training, it needed perhaps different skill sets, not just for IT, but for the organization overall. And so there were new teams formed. In fact, we have a company-wide change management and operational excellence team that's focused on just making the changes stick and figuring out how to optimize processes. We do a whole bunch of Kaizens to take existing processes and revamp them to be more tech ready. And then we can infuse tech into it, because the worst thing you can do is take a broken process and automate it. Yeah, so we take the time to get the process right before we automate it. So it's everyone's participating in this transformation. It's not just IT, and that's what positions us well for this kind of growth.
Amazing. And talk a bit about the team you lead as well. I mean, as I think about the scale that you described, the number of employees generally, forget IT alone, but the number of employees you have are relatively small for how consequential this business is in terms of scale, in terms of revenue, et cetera. Talk a bit about IT, which I have to imagine reflects that, and thus must be an operation that does a lot with, in the grand scheme of things, sort of a relatively tight-knit technology team. But I'd love to hear more about that from you.
Sure, I think that it's deep-rooted in our culture to not have waste in the system. So when you think about the fact that we are a 2,500 person company that is running $220 billion worth of assets under management, you get the idea of what IT may be doing with our resources and how we are managing them. It's no different than the company overall. Prologis is pretty good at doing more with less. But having said that, I think that we are well equipped between our full-time employees and the partners that we work with, and we have some very good partners we work with to meet all these needs that are coming at us. We have seen steady growth in our IT budgets, and how much our executive team believes in technology is evident in just the hockey stick approach to IT funding. So all that's good. I'm not sharing concrete numbers intentionally, Peter, in case any of my competitors may be watching this, but you get the idea that we've been on a good cadence of having our technology budgets and resourcing increase. And that has stood well as we stood up these new teams that I talked about, supporting some of our newer areas like energy.
Yeah, and I'd love to double click on that. You've already mentioned it. A fascinating aspect of your business during your tenure is new areas you've gotten into. You are now the second largest solar producer in the US, you shared with me. You are a major supply chain solutions provider. These are areas that are adjacencies that you've gotten into. And you talked a bit about the way in which your team then dedicates resources and solutions to these as they come online and then continues to, as it does with other parts of the business. I wonder how much, as you think about new businesses that are brought online, is done commonly across those versus those areas that become very specific, and especially in those areas where specificity and technology that is tailored to the needs of a new business, how do you ramp up some of the expertise associated with that?
No, we have to bring in expertise from the outside, not just on the IT side, our business side. You look at our energy and sustainability business, for instance, right from the head of that group, Susan Uday Kumar on down. They're all, most of them have come from an energy background, a deep energy background. And so, 7 years ago, we didn't have that when I first joined the company because we didn't have a business. So we've been continually increasing the appropriate level of and type of skills that we need to stand up these businesses. Data center business, for instance, is right now something that we are heavily involved in, and we brought in some great talent from the outside that would allow us to make a mark in those areas. So, but in terms of the common, and this goes beyond new businesses too. In my time here, rough count, probably we've done 5 M&As. And all of those mergers or acquisitions that we've done of companies in the last 7 years that I've been here, we've not added any resources in terms of tech resources. Our IT team has not grown as a result of it. And the company overall hasn't grown in relative to if you just look at the amount of square footage we've added. And all that's because we have a playbook and we have systems and processes in place that are easy to onboard someone onto. And there's never this real discussion when it comes to tech, for instance, of, well, should we retain some of the systems that we've just acquired? We're acquiring the real estate portfolio of these companies, not their tech. They're coming onto our systems, and that's boarded us well. We are very, very protective and value what our proprietary data is and what it brings to the mix. So in terms of the technology supporting it, which is our data infrastructure, the data foundations, the analytics, the BI tools, all of the AI that we've since layered on that data, that is all common. So for us to be, for instance, able to join energy data with our real estate data isn't that hard because we have it all in one place and makes it easy to do that kind of a join. And so what we have then done is these things that are horizontal and are a common concern. Let's take even information security. We have unfortunately gotten the attention of some bad actors as well as our success grows. And so that the concerns, this information security concerns, or the whether it's information technology related or operating technology related, those are common again across all these businesses. So reuse the horizontals and focus on building the verticals is perhaps the best way I would term on how we've managed to absorb all these new companies that we've acquired, as well as get the new businesses stood up.
Fascinating indeed. And I want to talk about this lasting advantage you have with proprietary data, as you noted, and very powerful the way in which you describe that an advantage of having non-negotiables when it comes to technology is ensuring that everything is comes together in the way that you described, such that the data from older parts of your business and newer parts of your business coexists, and you can find better ways to do analysis centered around it, as an example that you provided. I wonder if you could talk a bit further about your data strategy and the foundation that you have laid, and now layering, as you mentioned, artificial intelligence on top of that, to talk a bit further about the use of that data and the way in which your team is able to provide new value to the organization as a result of mining it.
Sure thing. So we are 100% cloud-based shop. So we don't run data centers and of our own.
I was going to say it's almost ironic given the fact that that's a major part of your business otherwise.
I can see the irony even as I say that. We don't have data centers of our own, but because we are 100% cloud-based and we have lots of SaaS solutions, therefore, in the mix in our tech stack, it makes the concept of data and what constitutes a business entity that much more difficult. So the definition of a tenant or a customer, or the definition of a property, or the definition of an investor, sometimes you can see how easily that definition could spread across multiple SaaS solutions and the like that we have, the systems that we have. So it was necessary to bring all that data together and have a common model, data model, a set of data models that would allow those core business entity definitions to be preserved and maintained. And so what that then does is think of it as sort of foundational building blocks of data that we built, which then presents a way to present analytics starting blocks, basic building blocks, with the goal always being, and this has been a consistent goal since day one, to get our business users to be to the point of self-service. You have of course, your management reporting and your canned reporting, but you also have the ability to slice and dice data on your own. And that's what fosters innovation. And we provided the technology infrastructure, starting with our cloud-based data warehouse to our BI tools and data modeling tools, and to enable every single analyst across the company, for instance, to be able to slice and dice this data. Is there use of spreadsheets still? I go back to my comment earlier. Sure, there is. And sometimes it's a valid use. But a lot of the work that involves experimentation has moved into systems, and that's a great change to see. Between the canned reporting and the experimental reporting, we have now this concept of certified data versus uncertified data, so that there is a path for any of these experiments, if successful, to get to the point where it's an enterprise-wide data asset. So I feel really good about our data journey. We're still in the middle of it. And now, of course, with AI, it's because we invested the time and money to put in this strong data foundation in, layering AI on it becomes that much easier. So for instance, even as ChatGPT just came out, I remember back in the day, it's only 2 years ago, but it seems like a long time ago, that as ChatGPT came out and there's all this beginning of the buzz about generative AI, companies struggled with trying to figure out how to put their own proprietary data behind AI infrastructure. And our struggle, I would say, was less compared to some of these other companies because we had the strong data foundation. Now, a lot of things we built in the early days of AI to wire the two together has been throwaway work, because the pace of innovation in this area is such that what is a differentiator today is commodity about 3 months from now. So we get that, but the learnings are surpass the 3 months, and those learnings really help us then decide, even when it becomes commodity, what to invest in. So we've had a good frame there around AI and layering that.
Very interesting indeed. I appreciate you sharing some of those details. It strikes me that as the business gets into some of these more tech-centric businesses where the clients themselves are technology organizations. I wonder if there are any special insights you have by virtue of being in the technology space now, serving technology customers to a greater extent as well. Any interesting insights as a result of some of those newer relationships?
Yeah, I think the biggest common problem that everyone has is around data and visibility. So I've seen that even the largest companies in the world would love to understand their supply chain more, be able to map their network better. And so there are some common threads in the problem statements that we are seeing. It is also a case where we see that when it comes to our operating essentials business, for instance, which is where we provide a set of products and services adjacent to the warehouse itself. The operating essentials business, a lot of the more sophisticated technology solutions that we offer, like a smart building, are the pitch has to be made to the technology side of the house, and so that's a good thing for me, perhaps, in the sense that we are talking to the technology side of our customers, which we weren't before. And by the way, that's a general theme. We today, as a company, Prologis, we talk to the chief innovation officers, the chief supply chain officers. We've created forums for these cohorts, these groups to have an exchange of ideas. Whereas in the past, true to being a real estate company, our contacts probably were more with just the real estate side of the house, and that's not the case anymore. But yeah, there's certainly some common threads. Everyone's trying to figure out this AI and what to do there. Everyone's on the automation journey, and they're all things we can help with.
I wanted also to ask you now, still relatively early in 2025, what are some of the additional trends? We talked about a number of them. Any new kinds of ideas or trends that have you particularly excited as you contemplate the year ahead or the next several years ahead, as the case may be?
So we have some, as I was telling you offline, we are just unveiling a new, a tweaked IT strategy for the next 3 years within the company as we are looking at what's ahead. And, the key thing for me is that these new businesses that we've stood up have to be successful. And we are certainly on a path. We've had to bring in entire new systems, even billing systems, so core systems like that, in order to support these new businesses. And that will continue. And 2025 will certainly be an accelerator for those. We have put some very ambitious goals around our net zero, for instance. It's net zero by 2040. We have a gig of solar by the end of this year. Between solar and storage, we aim to get to 1 gigawatt, and it's a very, very aggressive milestone and goal. And technology certainly plays a huge role in that, and we were helping the business that way. The standard thread of automation continues. I think it will never end. We certainly have our eyes on AI. And in AI, the basic shift, if you will, in 2025 is to, now that the chat-based enthusiasm is fully set in, that we begin to start embedding it in our core business processes and decision making. So 25 will be a year where you kind of move away from the chatbot-based AI solutions to more, it's happening behind the scenes. And if you're a user of a technology system, it is embedded into it so that it is just the way you work. It doesn't come across as you're going to ask AI something. That's a tall order, but with the advent of agentic AI, I think we will be able to get this done. By the way, the pace of that technology just fascinates me, and so really looking forward to that. And then, of course, we have our proprietary data that I talked about that we want to expand. with these new businesses, we get more opportunity to capture and harness and leverage some of this new data. And so that will be certainly a focus as well.
All fascinating areas to continue to keep an eye on. I appreciate you sharing each of those. Before I let you go, Sineesh, I wanted to see if there's anything you've recently read, watched, and or listened to that you would recommend to your peers. Anything that immediately comes to mind?
Sure. Well, this may not be relevant to everything else we've talked about so far, but I'll tell you the book that I'm reading, and it's a pretty big book that I'm almost done with, is the one by Kim Macquarie called "The Last Days of the Inca Empire." So if you the backstory is, I recently had the good fortune to go to Machu Picchu and look at the Incan ruins there. And I just got fascinated by the story of how the Incans had this massive 2,500 mile long territory in South America for about 300 years or so there in the 16th century. And then almost overnight, it all got wiped out. And the story of human conflict and the fact that everyone in Peru, in modern Peru, is pretty much has some amount of Spanish blood in them at this point, and the Spaniards were the conquerors. It was fascinating sort of a setup for, and so I wanted to dig deeper into it. And so this is a book I've been reading, and it's fascinating. I do listen to a bunch of podcasts, and so they keep coming on, and I enjoy them. And it's interesting how they differ from each other and what's common between them. And of course, Peter, I check out your podcast too, so not to leave you out. But All In is a good one. I listen to Pivot. It's sometimes those two are very fascinating in terms of how they align or not with each other's viewpoints. But that the technology and political nexus that both of them delve into is pretty fascinating.
Yeah, well, good recommendations all. I really appreciate you sharing those, Sineesh, and appreciate the conversation more generally speaking. What a remarkable ride you've had across your 7 years at Prologis, and appreciate you sharing some perspectives about that journey, the remarkable progress your team continues to make as sources of innovation today, but also projecting forward as well. It's been a fascinating conversation, and I'm grateful for it.
Well, thank you, Peter. Thank you for the chat, and I enjoyed it.